start, because I've been wondering this, I think I know the answer because I've eaten your food, but the name Unapologetic Food Group, where does Unapologetic Food come from?
Before we start, I just want to take a moment and thank everybody, Lengua, you, but more than that, we can't talk about Indian food in this mellow mindset. Guys, can I hear some crowds cheering? Yes, we're talking about spices. Come on. Thank you. All right, let's do this now. Way too serious crowd. We're talking spices, colors. Come on. All right, so Unapologetic Foods. It's not about food alone. It's a mindset towards being you without compromising who you are. And if I look around the room, I bet every single one of us, or most of us, at some point might have felt the need to fit in, might have felt that you needed to be somebody a little bit different in order to fit into a culture that's not yours sometimes. But how do you do that? And I think the world that we live in today, there's only one way to be, and that's unapologetic.
And it comes across in the food, I think, when you dine at your restaurants.
Yes, and if you look at the product, the way we do it, I always say that what used to happen is that my life has been divided in two parts. One, where I was actually cooking to show it off to people that what I can do or how capable I was. And then I was cooking what I personally would love to eat. And I think that's where the trajectory changed. So that's also unapologetic.
Let's go back to the beginning, the origin story. How do you two meet? How does this company form? What's the first restaurant? Let's start with that journey.
We just swiped right, that's how we met. That's a joke we always say. No, so we actually, and those who didn't get the joke and didn't laugh, swipe right means it's for Tinder. Okay.
I think they know. Tinder made it to Miami, yeah?
No, so we actually, it's funny enough, we met in 2017 in month of March. It was through a common friend. And I was very new to New York. I was a year old. He's always lived his life in New York. He grew up, he's a New Yorker. And it was just that somebody who was from the industry felt that you guys should meet because it might do something great in the future.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, by that time when I'm meeting him, I opened a very small little mom and pop shop, or son and pop shop in the Lower East Side of Manhattan with my dad. And he was retiring, so I thought it would be exciting to just... The way I even got into the industry was because at some point I just didn't want my dad to feel old. Swear to God, I had a corporate job, engineer, completely different life. And for me growing up, going out to a restaurant to eat almost felt like a luxury at times. We couldn't go all the time. When we went to a Red Lobster, it felt like it was nice. I'd never imagined that it was possible for us to one day own a restaurant. And it happened at a much later point for us as a family. But when I did get into that space, that's when I started to question the things and said, how come these things are so broken? The industry has a hierarchy. If we believe it or not, there is a hierarchy for where quote unquote ethnic food resides and where there's Eurocentric vision of where food resides. And it's the idea that I think we are living in that moment where we're questioning that as a group. Why do we have that? Why is it that we're willing to pay for risotto a certain price when at the same time what is khichdi for what we cook at home? Probably same ingredients, maybe a few more. We're not always willing to do that. So those questions really led me to leave what I was doing and start the endeavor. But I knew in order to start that, I needed somebody who believed in the same vision. And that's how, Chef Chintan and I met. And it was within he was the one guy. I said, we should talk about the structure. How should we do this? He said, why do you want to talk about money if you haven't tried my food? I was like, this was the first chef who ever asked that question. It's like, all right, let's try this food. Clearly, he's somewhat confident. Here we are.
And so what was the first restaurant that you guys opened?
The first one we opened was a venture called Rahi, R-A-H-I. It really focused on food from different parts of India. But I think in some shape, as I look back, it was also a reflection of a moment where two people who didn't have a clue about each other started to work, So we were both kind of being a little respectful of each other's space. He didn't say outright on day one, screw you, this is what it is. So that, in many ways, it was a very unique and exciting project. But what really changed the dynamic of the group was our second project. And I remember when the first project started, it was like a normal restaurant opening in New York. It happened, people showed up, some people wrote about it, but it wasn't something that made a huge bang. And we were okay with it. We were like, okay, we'll keep going, we'll keep trying. There was a tiny little location. It was probably a C- location. Don't tell the landlord I said that, but in Long Island City that had a rent that was quite affordable. And it used to be a restaurant. And those guys came to my dad to say, hey, my restaurant is not running. Would you like to take over? And we're like, well, it just doesn't make sense. But the infrastructure's there, right? So the hood and whatever, so you don't have to spend a lot of money. So we still said, okay, fine, we'll do it. And that was the first time Adda was created. And that's when I think it solidified what the vision was. It was the first time we understood what it was to actually have a line out the door. And what it feels like, because till then I've never seen that for Indian cuisine. And that was the first time I think Chef Chintan turned a completely different leaf and said, screw you, this is the food, take it or leave it, not just to me, but to all of New York City.
And like somebody always keeps on asking about Unapologetic, and it's not that the first day that we met, it was conceived that day. It was over a period of time that we kept on working with each other and realized, and everybody goes through that phase where you keep on learning, keep on changing. But I think what happened is that when we did Adda, and honestly, like when I did the first draft for the Adda, he was actually very upset.
Why?
He didn't like. He thought the menu was disastrous.
What was wrong with it?
I thought nobody will show up if this guy puts them on the menu. I'm not joking. There's two sides of a menu to really scare off a customer. You are on one side putting things, here's butter chicken, here's saag paneer. He doesn't tell me that he's going to cook saag paneer, a dish that everybody understands, with the local green, and he's going to make his own paneer. I don't know this. He's like, yeah, it's saag paneer. The next thing on the menu is goat brains. So I'm like, if those who want to show up will never turn towards us in a location that I have no idea, there's 0 foot traffic, who the heck is coming to us? There's no press or media that's going to show up. And that's when literally we used to go around, give out flyers, hoping somebody would show up to the restaurant.
Yeah, and I think what happened is with Adda, it basically, and I always say the way the company has grown is that Adda is when we started crawling, Dhamaka is when we started walking, Sema is when we started running, and I think after that we started flying. It's as simple as that. But Adda was the biggest learning for us, and if Adda had not done well or not succeeded, we won't be sitting here. Neither would have been invited for this, right?
He agrees.
No. So in a lot of ways, we always say that Adda is it was the project which actually gave us idea to what to do next, and that's where the entire concept of Unapologetic Foods arose, and it gave us that power.
What was the biggest learning? You say this was the moment when we learned. What was the biggest learning during that period?
And this is someone as a customer told us, and it's a very powerful line he told us when he was dining at Adda. And he came in, very high profile person, he came in on a lunch and didn't have a table. He was waiting near, it's a very small place. If anybody has been to Adda, it's literally 1/4 of the space we are sitting in, the entire restaurant. And there's one bathroom, there's a fridge next to it where we store our beers. And this guy comes in, high profile guy, he recognizes him and he says, what do we do? I said, dude, there's no table, we can't give him. The guy was standing next to the bathroom every time, moving around for 30 minutes, sat, ate the food, and he told the server a very specific thing that everybody, when they open a restaurant in New York, want to do a very different version of ethnic food. And they feel that's what people want. But actual people want real ethnic food. And that's why people come back over here.
How do you guys feel about the term ethnic food as an umbrella term? It was something I struggled with in Italy. I lived in Italy for a long time, and they use this term to describe anything that's essentially not French or Italian. And I find it's hard to differentiate yourself, to create a voice.
It puts you in a box. Who made these rules? Who made the rule that a cuisine from a specific country will have to fall into the ethnic category. And if you notice a pattern, you're going to realize something really interesting. It always happens to countries where the economy is emerging. So really, and if you directly find the socioeconomic correlation with the cuisine and the perception of that, along with how we are categorizing it. And that's the barrier, that's the shackle we start to put around ourselves. And that's what makes us, as operators, at times desperate. One, you are playing in a market that already has low margins. Then you are going into a niche direction to say, this is what I'll do. And then you start to serve goat brains. I mean, for the love of God, it's like if you had the 5 people who were going to show up, they're not going to show up anymore. And guys, I think we all understand that because every single person in this room is somehow related to the culinary world. I think Adda was the first time we looked within rather than looking outward. It was the first time we believed in our own core values, and we were no longer ashamed of putting out a dish that he had a whole fish. Yeah, it's all, the bones are there. Yes, the gravy is spicy. Deal with it. Why? Why are we making this big deal about what are these ideas and perceptions? And if you notice, those perceptions are steeped into us. We come from a colonial past, and we're still breaking the shackles of those colonialism without us ever realizing it. And I think Adda was that awakening moment. What we didn't know, we thought it would be just us. What we didn't know was New York, America, and people beyond that, it would strike a nerve to a point where the very first time in my life, I see a few people standing outside, and I genuinely, I swear to God, I thought they were there for like a concert or something going on nearby. I had no idea. I walk outside hoping, I'm like, you know what? Maybe after the concert, they'll grab a bite. This is like day 5. I go outside and I'm like, wow, what are you guys doing here? They look at me with like a dumbfounded stare. They're like, we're waiting for you guys to open. And I look around, there's literally a line around the block, and I don't think I've ever seen that in my lifetime or imagined that was possible, especially in a location where Adda was.
It's a really unfair umbrella term, I think, that's thrown around too much, especially for a cuisine that's so regional, so diverse, so rich.
I don't think it's about Indian cuisine. I think it's about every cuisine that's underrepresented. Peruvian cuisine, Vietnamese cuisine, Filipino cuisine. You start naming and you're going to start to you're going to realize something funny. You've actually categorized majority of the world as ethnic.
in one label.
How ridiculous is that? Majority of the planet is somehow the outcast. We don't agree with that.
And let's take it to the now. Where are we now? How many restaurants? Fill people in on. We started at the beginning. We got to the second restaurant. What does the group look like now?
So currently we have 5 restaurants. 4 of them are Indian. 1 is Filipino. I'll come back on that part. And then we have 2 fried chicken shop. And we are few months out from opening up a kebab shop. And so fried chicken shop is like a fast casual restaurant. It's like an Indian version of fried chicken. We love eating fried chicken. So that was always a part of our, it was like a passion project for us. And kebab shop is because we love eating kebabs. And we don't get good kebabs in America. That's why. And just wanted to come back on the Filipino part because a lot of people ask us that, you guys are, like, even if you look at our shirt, it says Unapologetic Indian. Like everybody in the team wears this t-shirt where they're working. And they're like, what made you do a Filipino restaurant? And I said, we didn't do a Filipino restaurant. We invested in an individual. So Eric, who's actually the chef partner at Nux, he's like the big boss of Nux. He runs the entire restaurant. He was our first employee who started in kitchen, became the chef de cuisine of our first restaurant. Then he became chef de cuisine of Dhamaka. And after 6 years, we were like, what's next? Like, you can't be all your life cooking Indian food. Like, do you want to go somewhere where we can recommend you to a better place and everything? And he says, I actually want to do what you did with Indian food. You broke the barriers. I want to do that with Filipino food. And that's how we opened up Nux. So that's why we have a Filipino restaurant in our company.
At what point during this journey of growth do you sit down and say, we're not restaurateurs anymore, this is a group? Was there a specific moment you remember, or does that just kind of happen naturally?
If I have to put it, we are still employees of this company. We are neither a group, we are neither a restaurateur. Like, if you look at his car, half the time there'll be restaurant stuff in his car. He basically is like a delivery driver for the company for the longest time. Yeah, no, literally, like everything was bootstrapped. Everything. Like if you think about it, like I work in New York, live in New Jersey, and there were times where something was $4 cheaper. I would actually pick it up from New Jersey and drive back in New York. So we still don't think that we are that restaurant group yet. There are many people ahead of us. We look up to them and everything. But I think we are still in that phase. We are growing. We are working hard.
I think when we look at words like scaling, they sound a bit corporate, don't they? The reality is, behind anything that's ever scaled, there's real emotions attached first. I always say this: food without emotion or purpose is just sustenance. And I've thought about that. We could all just be sitting in a basement somewhere eating a sandwich. There's nothing wrong with that. Why do restaurants exist? Why do we exist? What is this idea of scaling? It starts with something we truly believe and we love. And I think in some shape or form, maybe the realization hasn't fully come to us of a group and the awards and accolades, because we never started out chasing any of it, because the truth is we never thought we'll get a single award for anything. Just being honest. We genuinely thought, who the hell is even showing up? Forget the awards part. Which media is going to write about us? You're just serving food that has been overlooked for so long, and you're not modernizing it. The idea of why we even modernize for a lot of quote-unquote ethnic food is because, one, to command a certain price point to show that we are elevating ourselves. I don't know when the time came where any cuisine all of a sudden needed elevation. I don't know. So I don't know if that realization has fully, gotten there or not. I just think every day is a work in progress. We want to keep striving for more and keep pushing ourselves.
Chintan, has it been hard for you? Because I know at heart you're a chef, and chefs like to stay in the kitchen. But as you grow more and more restaurants and get bigger and bigger, it pulls you away from the kitchen a little bit. And we spoke about this a little bit the other night. How is that for you, and how do you manage that balance?
I think all the chefs that I know about, and I've worked with all my life, like 24 years of my life, I've done cooking. All of us, whether we agree or we don't agree, we are very insecure. Very insecure in some way or the other.
Very honest of you to say that. I think that's very admirable.
No, genuinely. And I think what happens is, like, if we had to grow, and we had this chat that if we had to grow, we actually started building the entire team a year back. Literally a year back. Where we were hiring people which we might not be needing at that point of time. But the job was to how to empower the entire team, individual restaurant, individual places, running their own show. And we look at how we grow this organization. And again, it was a very important question we asked ourselves that, we are in this position. Not everybody is in this position at this point of time. Everybody wants to be in this position. And we need to capitalize on it. And the only way we could have capitalized is that we let those insecurities go. Literally. And I think...
How do you do that, though? Because as you say, every chef is struggling with those insecurities. How do you let that go?
You need to start hiring people who are better than you. You need to get people who will actually challenge you. They might be working with you, above you, under you, but these should be the people who actually keeps on challenging you. And that is the best way to let your insecurities go.
Yeah, never be the smartest man in the room, as they say. Wish. Oh, no, very true, and I think very honest of you to speak like that.
To add to that, I think it's a matter of perspective. Sometimes when we build a restaurant, we look at it as building a restaurant. I don't think that's how we're looking at it. Our journey is about creating that generational shift in how people will look at not just food, but the people behind it. So to us, this journey is far bigger than the two of us. We just happen to be a couple of guys on stage talking to you guys. But this journey is about the whole community. Every single person who believed it, every single problem that we have faced as a cuisine, as a culture, all of those things. And maybe by the time we're no longer here, a real change has happened. And that's what this is about.
And how are consumers now reacting to this sort of Because you're in a role where you're kind of educating people's palates, really, aren't you, as you cook for them?
I think people have pretty sophisticated palates. I think it's not about the palate at all. I think we're seeking something that's real. I think you know when a chef is faking it. You know when we're not real. And we can all sense it. We're all smart enough to understand that. I don't think it's about the palate at all. I think it's more so about, am I there to try something that this person has actually poured their heart and soul to create, and something that's authentic, something that's real, something that's exciting. Real to that person, right? Everybody's truth is different. So similarly, what is that person's truth? If that's what Chef Chintan is cooking, it's not that we looked at a McKinsey report and we said, well, I think Indian food in 2018 is going to do X amount of business. There was none of that. It was something far more internal.
What's been the hardest part of this journey together? And I give you both that question. Maybe you go first, Roni, with it. You've got the mic.
I think the toughest part, I'll say the good part first, which is...
So that was my next question.
Remember, we don't follow rules. So
And we're not going to apologize.
Sorry, not sorry. Okay. I think the idea that when there was a very specific New York Magazine piece that came out that talked about how going to Dhamaka became a social currency. I think that's when the conversation was starting to shift beyond a transaction. I go to a restaurant, I spend money, and I eat the food. I think the challenging part has been, because we didn't start out with a clear business plan and a model, we were not creating the perfect Excel sheets that needed to support X amount of things. We followed our gut instincts. And that brought us to this point. I think the challenge that I see is the rest of the world wants to find a formula. That is, if there's one question that we get asked on a daily basis, which is, what's the secret formula? How did you guys do it? There is no secret. It's just cold, hard truth. If we didn't believe what we did, I don't think any of you would have believed in us. So I think if there's one challenge is to really make sure that you don't fall into the trappings of where the rest of the world is consistently looking for formulas for scaling, but you continue to somewhere keep a piece of your soul as you grow. And truth is, guys, as you grow, no matter what, it doesn't matter how big or small the company, yes, certain things have to evolve, compromise, change. That's a reality. But can you still somewhere maintain your soul? Do you still believe in this idea? If you do, let's go do it.
What about you?
I look at it very differently, and I always say that, if it was easy, everybody can do it. And I don't look at anything as a hard, impossible, unachievable. It's just a mindset. Like there are people who are planning to go live on Mars. We are still just cooking food. We are just running a restaurant. We are just dealing with humans on one-to-one basis where we can connect. And I genuinely don't find anything hard about this job or everything that we are doing. So maybe the only hard thing is working with him, that I assure. That's very painful.
And what's been the highlight for you then?
Sorry?
What's been a highlight for you on this journey? Roni has this idea of it becoming a social currency, and I can see why that had such value. But what's your moment where you're like, we've done this? This is.
I think like one of the biggest high that I get is when I see the way people react to what we are doing. And sometimes, you do something and you just think you are just doing your regular job and it's just a part of it, but it's how other people are inspired by it or how you look at it. And like there are multiple people, the guests come to us and they say that, we are so proud that at least somebody's now fighting for our culture. And we were just opening a restaurant to serve food that we believed in. And then people started perceiving that we are fighting for that culture and cuisine. So we didn't even knew about it till the time people started talking about it. And there's this amazing conversation I had with this guy, and I didn't even know he was a chef that time. So this was literally a week after I had won the James Beard, and I was at one of the restaurants, and this gentleman comes and sits there, and he starts eating food, and he starts talking to me. So I said, yeah, this. And then at some point I realized He was Korean by ethnicity, and he was actually a chef who has a phenomenal restaurant in New York. And so I said, "What made you come here?" He says that till the time, because I was the first chef to win the James Beard Award in New York cooking ethnic food. Till that time, nobody had got an award cooking ethnic food for New York State, which was actually very alarming for us when we realized that. And he says that all my life I was made to believe that the food that I cook is not worthy of any awards, but what you guys have done has made me believe that I can also win this award. And he says, that's why I'm here, and I'm lucky that I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Now, these are the things which, like genuinely, like I won the award, obviously we were very happy, but I was like, yeah, it's okay. But that actually makes you believe like it's a very impactful thing for other people.
How much of your decisions are intentional versus instinctual? Because you come across like you're driven more by instinct than intent. But maybe I'm seeing it wrong.
I'll just say one thing to you, that everything that we have done, like we literally had this talk yesterday about the Adda thing, right? And I said that everything we have done, if we actually made a business model and went to somebody to say that, would you invest with us? We'll actually be kicked out of that room.
Why?
It is because nothing is driven by textbook. Everything is very like, it just questions the entire norm of whatever is happening in this industry, in dining industry, or if you call it the ethnic food industry. We basically are questioning everything that is supposed to be successful and saying how we do it better. And I think that is maybe what people connect with, and that's what people like. So I would say none of the things that we do are thought through. They are the most stupidest conversations we'll have, stupidest things, like it's just crazy. You just don't know how many stupidity we do enter that. That's great.
He's just speaking about himself.
You're going to be the intentional one.
No, actually, I think he's quite intentional in many ways. He said something when we started working that I will never forget. He said, Roni, it's not always going to be where we will agree with each other. But whatever the decision is that we choose to make, we have to give each other that 110% to support it. It's a very important thing to keep in mind in any kind of a partnership model, because it always becomes my idea. He doesn't agree with it. There are times he doesn't agree with me, but he will never drag his feet for 1 second. He say, okay, is that what we're going? Let's go and do it. And I've been wrong. He has been wrong. And we're okay. The point is, there is no aha moment when you're wrong. There's nobody that's trying to judge you to say, how the hell did you get it wrong? Guys, we get things wrong all day, all night, every day. It's not like there's a perfect recipe that we follow where everything is, perfect. It's not. So what happens is when something doesn't go right, we don't stand there and judge each other. We don't say, you said this. This is why this is happening. No, we say, okay, this is where we are. What do we do now? Okay, let's evolve. Let's change. We just never make it about ourselves. And it becomes about the bigger conversation that we're having and how do we keep moving forward. I don't think there's a person in this room who can claim that they have made every decision perfectly. Maybe Nadal, I don't know, once in a while. But I think it's a different mindset. So it's not so much of us following the textbook examples of what a restaurant is and how it needs to be built. You just question things and do it the way you want to.
And we're going to open up to some questions from the crowd soon, so if you've got any, please be ready. And a little challenge. I'm going to ask one more question, but I'd like you to think of a question to ask each other up here on stage as well. I want you to think of something that you would ask each other. But before you come to that, what's the next plans for this group? Where are you going? Are you going to step out of New York? Do you have plans for new concepts? What's the roadmap? Do you have one?
We do. As absolutely disastrous as we sound, there's a slight method to the madness somewhere. We just don't let the method destroy the madness.
Nice.
The roadmap is, for the first time, we'll be stepping outside of New York. There's a few projects that we're looking beyond New York City, which has been our home for so long. There are a couple of different channels of growth and scalability that we are looking at.
Still in the US or international?
In the United States, yes.
I'm selfishly thinking, come to Europe. That's all. Please.
The day you write the check, we are there.
But I think
I need to be paid more.
I think there's three core components that we're looking at. Is we don't look at it as what the vehicle is. We look at it as how are we having a conversation about our community, our culture with you. And sometimes it falls in the category of a restaurant. Sometimes it falls in the category of that's a little counter shop serving fried chicken or a little grilled meat kebab, like how it used to be in the roadsides of India. It still is. Or maybe it's you something cooking at home. But we remain within that world. But in the end, the idea is how do we reach you? And if there's one thing that's coming up, it's yes, beyond New York, but I think these are the three key areas that we're strongly looking into as we speak.
Exciting.
I just want to add something, and he always disagrees, but I'll just say that in partnership, it's very important. There are times where you'll not agree or something, but if there's something as a gut feeling, you should always do it. I'll give you an example. Like when we started working, I said, let me make the new menu for the restaurants. I made this first dish, and actually he hated it, which I thought was outstanding. And he hated it, and he says it cannot be on the menu, like it cannot be. And I just started working. I'm like, yeah, let's not have it on the menu. But when we were doing the second restaurant, Adda, as I said, he was like upset with the menu. He actually didn't pay attention. I put the same dish back on the menu. So that dish was always there. I loved it. And
What was the dish?
It's called kale pakoda. It came on the menu. He didn't even know that because he was so upset, didn't see the menu, nothing. Just take it. And then year-end 2018, one of the publications says it was one of the best dishes of the year.
He tries to rub it in every conversation.
Yeah, he's never let you forget it.
So just please trust me. Just follow your vision. Whatever you like, just make sure you do it. Don't upset your partner, but just do it.
Over my dead body, there will be kale pakoras just floating around. Yes, I told you so. Yes.
What would you ask each other up here on stage? I know you spend so much time together, but I'd like to know what you'd ask each other right now.
Want me to go? You want to go for it? I have a simple question. When are we opening in Miami?
Whenever Nadal allows us to do it. That's the big boss.
Well, they can definitely handle your spice here, for sure.
I don't think you guys understand how much time we spend with each other, probably more than our wives. So it's a little too much, but sure. When would the time come when Chintan would accept the fact that he's actually a businessman more than he's a chef?
Tough question for all chefs, that I think.
I would love to be businessman if my bank balance sounds better now. That's the only way. No, joke. No, I think what happens is that it's... I think and I always say to people that, both of us have lots of weaknesses and very few strengths. And we just cope up on each other's strengths and weakness. So if I became a businessman, there'll be no person cooking now, Roni. So I'd rather remain that cook and you send the business side, trust me.
I will say, I think it's something that when we talk about chefs, etc., I have rarely met a chef who is that focused on the business side, not equally, probably more, to really understand. And there's tons of times I go to him to ask for business advice. Should we do this? Is this the right thing? And there are moments that we have trusted each other's gut reactions on that. I think it's not about just following your gut. Like, it sounds almost silly, right? It almost sounds like, what the heck, man? Like, just because whatever, you feel like doing something, you do it. I think there are layers we create within ourselves that prevents us from hearing our own truth. And I think it took us years to shed those layers so we can just truly hear what our voice is. And I feel that if there's one voice that can literally sing the loudest in the world, it's your own. And it's just, our journey is actually less external, more internal. How do we keep digging deeper and deeper within ourselves to keep finding what our real voice is? What do we believe and what do we stand for?
Beautiful, really beautiful. Let's open it up to some questions from the crowd. I'm already getting looks from the side because I've gone over time, but let's have a couple of questions from people out there.
Before any questions, how many people here have heard of Dhamaka or Sema? Just a show of hands. All right, the rest of you, the door is that way. No more questions. Go ahead.
You touched at length about the underrepresentation about certain foods across the food and beverage industry. I think in Miami in particular, we've had a bit of a hard time embracing, especially South Asian cuisine. Obviously, you guys are from New York, but you're looking into projects in other places. Do you have any thoughts as to why that could be? And also any plans to change that?
It's a deeper question, and I think in many ways it plays a role in a city like New York. I don't know if we would have been successful in another city if we started there. I'm not sure if even LA, if we started serving goat brains day one. Today it's different. But if we started the journey there, on that note, I'm not sure. I think New York has this incredible sense of diversity. Diversity isn't just about how many minorities are there in the room. Diversity is having real good representation of all different backgrounds. And I think what New York has is a really high concentration of that diversity. And what it does, it allows to lift each other up. So in some shape or form, I think the idea of that, us being born in New York, makes complete sense. And then in terms of Miami, I think it's a matter of time. I think we do question this thing is, it's not about Miami, and I'll share this with anybody who's looking to grow their next venture. We are not looking at it as, here's who we are, let me tell you how it's done. We actually spend time in those neighborhoods to understand that. So even within New York, when we opened up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, it's a different world than it is in downtown Manhattan, than it is from uptown Manhattan. And we spent a significant amount of time there to understand what's happening in this neighborhood.
Lots of yoga.
Huh?
Lots of yoga happening in
Yes,
Blackpool.
there's lots of strollers, lots
Yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff. But beyond that, I think that is the idea. So whatever happens in Miami, we want to make sure that we understand where those gaps in a local market is. We don't build destinations. We build a local community-driven project which turns into a destination somehow.
One more question. We have time for one more question. This chap at the back.
Guys, thanks first of all for being here. Pleasure meeting both of you. And for the record, I've eaten at Dhamaka, so I'm allowed to ask this question. You guys have an amazing story, and hearing your journey, it seems like you started this journey with sort of with opportunity presenting itself with that restaurant space, right? This cheap space that you were able to find. And I think in pushing forward that journey, you realize that there's like a bigger mission here, right? And about sharing yourselves, your what you like, being yourselves, unapologetically yourselves. And now that you've reached a level of success and breaking some of these barriers and boundaries, how do you feel that affects your intention for growth? Do you still feel like you have unfinished business of sharing your culture and or being unapologetically you, or is your growth now really going to be more aimed at more opportunity, just opportunity, where the opportunity lies?
I think if you look at our cuisine itself, and I'll just go that how the opportunity lies is that we are a population of 1.4 billion. India as a country is 1.4 billion. Every 50, 60 miles, the cuisine is little different. It keeps on changing, it keeps on changing. What had happened till now was that the entire cuisine was compartmentalized in 10 dishes, 10, 11 dishes. Even today, you can open up an Indian restaurant, sell those 11 dishes, and you can be very profitable. But what we looked is that we are not looking at these dishes. We are looking at how many options we have. So basically, we have this entire blank canvas in front of us, and we have just started. We just have like 4 different regions of India covered, and we still have like at least 1,000 to go. So that's where the opportunity lies, that how different you can be. How much you want to push it. And that's how you'll create this entire market for yourself. And just to add, I'll go back to the first question. that New York is a place where not only I'm talking about Indian food that we do, if you go eat Thai food, there's actual regional Thai food in New York and doing phenomenal job. Like you have Northern Thai, Southern Thai, Eastern, like amazing food. Same goes for Vietnamese, same goes for like most of the cuisines. New York is the place which you can do anything that you want. It has to be phenomenal quality, that's it. You cannot be on your B or a C game, it has to be A game. That's it.
And from my perspective, I understand, success, etc. Two things. One is I don't think we are any different than. There's nothing special about us. Not trying to sound humble. Truly, there's absolutely nothing special about any of us. We're just a couple of guys, like any of us in this room, just trying to figure it out. And the truth is, sometimes the word success can actually become the biggest limitation. It's something we talk about all the time. The moment it's a trapping in some way. The moment you start to be successful, you believe that's the recipe for success. And you stop thinking from where you were, and you start thinking, what else would it take to rise through that rank, to get that next award, to get the next accolade? And I think that's something that we have been really cognizant about to not fall into. After SEMA earns a Michelin star, we go and open a fried chicken shop. It doesn't really make sense, does it? But we did it because it's something that we've been talking about and we wanted to. A textbook example is to open a bigger version of something else. We have this restaurant. You don't know how many people come to us and they'll offer us money to say, 5 cities, Dhamaka, next year, let's go. We've never said yes to it because I don't think that's something that will compromise the soul of what that concept is. Does it mean there should be no concept that goes around the country? Yes, it should. And we would love to do that. That's what we're aspiring for. I just think we're nowhere near the word success. We just have long ways to go and we'll keep going.
And something that you need to focus is to, as I said, you need to be in the A game. Be very critical of yourself. And I'll give you an example like Dhamaka, when it opened up, it was an 80-seater restaurant. After 2 years, we shut down the restaurant for 1 week and we actually take down 10 seats out of it. Because we feel we are not doing justice to those other people with those extra 10 seats. So, these are certain things you need to be critical of yourself. Normally people come and say, why don't you have 40 more seats? And we are like, no, we'll destroy ourselves. And everybody needs to know that. That's why.
Guys, thank you so much. Thanks for coming from New York.